Hey, it's Alexi, and in this video we are taking a look at the DF Audio Minibay V2 compact 40-point patchbay. And now what a patchbay does is it basically exposes the inputs and outputs from your gear on a panel here, where you can basically take the signal and route it however you wish in your system by simply plugging cables into these sockets on the front panel here. Now the way they managed to make this so compact is by using TRS sockets for the connections to your gear on the top here. So basically you have two connections per each socket, and on the front they use these 3.5mm sockets, which basically use these Eurorack cables for the connections, so they save space compared to 1/4-inch sockets. Now the way I have this set up is that the outputs from my synthesizers and my drum machine are plugged into the sockets on the top that correspond to the sockets on the front here. So I get the outputs from my synthesizers on these sockets, and then these sockets on the bottom row are plugged into my line mixer. So basically each one of these is an input into the mixer, each one of these is an output from a synthesizer, and if I leave this unplugged, I have the connections normaled, which means that the signal is constantly flowing from A1 to B1, A2 to B2, etc. And when I plug a cable into one of these sockets, it will break the normaled connection and allow me to basically route the signal to somewhere else and bring it back to the mixer. So on the top row I have all of my pedals here, also in stereo. So I have the Golden reverberator, Mercury X, HX1 and VP4 on these sockets. Again, the inputs into the pedal are on the top row, and the outputs from the pedal are on the bottom row here. Now one thing to keep in mind if you get one of these is that in the beginning you need to get basically plenty of TRS to TS cables or adapters. I use a mix of basic TRS to TS cables and TRS to TS Y adapter, these cables. So that's something you need to factor into the price of the unit, because it's not exactly cheap, but once you have the cables and you have everything wired up, it's just so handy, and it takes up very little space here. And if you have a Eurorack system, you probably already have plenty of these 3.5mm cables for doing the connections on the front panel. Okay, so why do I have two of them? Now, that's a long story of one very slightly faulty Minibay and some very good customer service from Uns in Sweden. This is not sponsored. I just was very happy with their service, and from, of course, DF Audio as well. And of course, having two of these is very handy. It's quite a small unit, so it doesn't take up much space on my setup here, and it basically allows me to have my NTS2 oscilloscope here, the inputs and the through sockets exposed here instead of on the unit. And basically on the other one I only have one stereo pair available here, which is reserved for some synthesizer probably at a later date. And of course there's some redundancy here where I can add pedals or some synthesizers or whatever to this setup. So next I think I will show you a few examples of how I use this setup with my gear. Okay, for the first example, we will do a very simple patch here. So we have the multipoly running straight into the line mixer, so it's a dry sound from the multipoly, and I want to add reverb. So I will take these cables and plug them into the outputs of the multipoly, and plug the outputs into the Mercury X reverb pedal, and then I take the outputs from the Mercury X here and plug them into the inputs on the mixer. So what we are getting now is a lovely bit of reverb on our multipoly here. Now another thing we can do is take these cables from the output of the multipoly and plug them into the oscilloscope inputs on the top Minibay here. So now we can see the signal from the multipoly on the screen there, and then we can take the through sockets from the oscilloscope and run these into the Mercury X. So now basically we have the dry signal on the oscilloscope here, and then it's going through the oscilloscope into the Mercury X. So we get the same sound as before, but now we can monitor the waveforms on our oscilloscope here. Now for the next example, I will bring in some drums here from the TR6S. And now I want to run both of them into the same reverb here. So I will take the multipoly first and run them into the summing mixer on the top right here. So there's this, there's actually two summing mixers here, so 3-in-1 mixers here, and we have the multipoly running into the mixer, and then we'll take signal from the TR6S and run that into the mixer as well. Left into the top one, right into the bottom one. Now we'll take the output from the summing mixer and plug that into the Mercury X inputs, and from the Mercury X outputs again into a mixer input here. So now we have two sources running into the same effects pedal here. And of course we can run the multipoly into one FX unit here. Let's say we take the multipoly into the Mercury X, and then we can run the TR6S into another pedal. I really like the golden with drums. So we'll plug into that one. And we'll use the corresponding mixer input. It doesn't matter which input you use here. If you have a free one that you're not using, you can just plug into that one. So I'll just choose the percussion plate reverb here that I really like with drums. So now we're getting separate effects on each instrument here. Now for this final patch example, I will use a passive multiple in my Eurorack system here. I will do a parallel routing of an effects unit here. So first off, I will set the Mercury X to kill dry, so we're not getting a dry signal through that when we plug into it. But I will take the outputs from the multipoly, plug them into a basic passive mult in the Eurorack system. And then I will take the output from the mult into the mixer input here. And now we have the same sound as before, just a dry sound, but I will take another copy of the output of the multipoly and run that into the Mercury X. So like this. And then I will run the outputs from the Mercury X into an unused mixer channel here. So I basically have an unused channel on the last sockets here. So now we have a parallel routing of an FX unit. So we have the dry signal here separately, and then we have the same signal running into the FX unit, and there is no dry signal coming from the Mercury X right now, so it's just a reverb. So this way you can have basically a fully analog signal chain here, and basically have your dry signal bypass the FX unit, and then simply send a copy of your dry signal into the FX unit and have a parallel routed FX here. Okay, I think that's it for this video on the DF Audio Minibay V2. This is one of my favorite pieces of gear in my setup, and having two of them is very handy. So it's basically just allows me to tinker with my gear all the time without much bother here. I just need cables. You'll make a lot of spaghetti here. But if you are used to a modular system, then it shouldn't really bother you that much. Okay, so if you're still watching, thank you so much for sticking around, and I hope you found this short introduction and explanation of the DF Audio Minibay useful. And if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and I will see you again very soon.